Hello everyone and welcome back to Shadow Man Stories. I can picture some of you already in bed, maybe some of you just getting home from work. Wherever you are, whatever time it is, I'm glad you're here. If this helps you relax or sleep, please like and subscribe. It means a lot. Now, let's get you comfortable and I'll tell you tonight's story. My name is Thomas Ridgway and I've been a park ranger at George Washington National Forest for 12 years. Everyone calls me Tom. My dad was a ranger here before me and his dad before him. It's in our blood, I guess, taking care of these mountains. But there's something you need to know about my family. We don't live very long. My grandfather died when I was 5. Car accident on Devil's Backbone Ridge, the winding mountain road that cuts through our section of forest. My dad made it to 34 before the same road took him. I'm 36 now, and every morning I wake up wondering if today's the day. That's why I'm so careful about everything. My safety record is perfect. Not one serious accident on Devil's Backbone since I took over. I check those road barriers every single night. I test every emergency phone. I keep detailed records of every incident, every close call, every time someone slides off the road in bad weather. The logbook sits on my desk, thick, leather-bound, passed down through 3 generations of Ridgways. My grandfather started it in 1952. Page after page of accidents, deaths, near misses. 237 people have died on that road in the past 60 years. I know because I count them. I know their names, their ages, what kind of cars they were driving. I tell myself I'm being careful, professional. But the truth is, I'm scared. Scared of the family curse. Scared of ending up like Dad and Grandpa. So I do everything right. Everything by the book. Tonight's like every other night. 10 p.m., time for my rounds. I grab my flashlight, radio, and keys. The forest is quiet. Too quiet, really. No night birds, no insects buzzing. Even the wind has stopped. It's the kind of silence that makes your ears ring. I drive the patrol road slowly, checking each mile marker. The emergency phones are spaced every 2 miles along Devil's Back. K-Bone. I stop at each one, pick up the receiver, listen for the dial tone. Phone 1 works fine. Phone 2 works fine. When I pick up phone 3, instead of a dial tone, I hear something else. Static. Then a voice, faint and crackling. Company, fall in. Prisoners will be executed at dawn. I drop the phone like it burned me. When I pick it up again, there's just a normal dial tone. My hands are shaking as I write in my logbook. October 15, 1989, phone 3 equipment malfunction. Request maintenance. But I know it wasn't a malfunction. I've heard that voice before. In dreams, I try to forget. The next morning, I'm back at the office trying to focus on paperwork when the call comes in. Single car accident on Devil's Backbone. Mile marker 7. No injuries, but the driver's pretty shaken up. I drive out to find a blue Honda Civic wrapped around one of our oak trees. The driver's a young woman, maybe 25, sitting in my patrol car with a blanket around her shoulders. I don't understand what happened, she keeps saying. The steering wheel just turned by itself, like someone else was driving. I nod and take notes, but I'm looking at where her car hit. The tree's bark is scraped, but not from the impact. Someone, or something, has carved names into it. Deep, fresh cuts that weren't there yesterday. Private J. Morrison, 22nd Virginia Infantry. Private R. Hayes, 22nd Virginia Infantry. Civil War names. Civil War Regiment. Ma'am, did you see anyone else on the road? I ask. She looks at me with wide eyes. That's the thing. Right before I lost control, I saw soldiers. Men in gray uniforms standing in the road, but that's impossible, right? I help her call a tow truck and fill out the incident report. But I don't write down what she said about the soldiers. Some things you keep to yourself. That night, I'm back at phone 3. This time, I bring a tape record. When I pick up the receiver, the voice is clearer. 47 prisoners confirmed. Execute them at dawn. Make it quick and clean. I press record. The voice continues. Tommy? Tommy? Is that you, boy? My blood goes cold. I know that voice. Grandpa? Tommy, you can't save them. Our family pays the debt for what we done. Your daddy learned that. You will too. The line goes dead. When I play back the tape, there's nothing but static. I drive home with my hands gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles are white. In my rearview mirror, I see a man walking along the road. He's wearing a gray uniform and carrying a rifle. When I blink, he's gone. At home, I pull out the old photo albums. There's Grandpa in his ranger uniform, standing next to the same patrol car I drive now. He's smiling, but his eyes look tired, scared, like he knew what was coming. I find his personal journal in the attic. The last entry is dated 3 days before his accident. The debt passes down. Every generation, one Ridgway dies on the mountain. Tommy's father is 8 years old. Strong boy. He'll make a good ranger when his time comes. I just pray he finds a way to break the cycle. But Dad didn't break it. And now it's my turn. The accidents start happening faster after that. 3 in 1 week, all at mile marker 7, all single cars that lost control according to the drivers. But I know better now. I start sleeping in the ranger station, monitoring the radio. Every night around midnight I hear marching, footsteps in perfect formation, moving along Devil's Backbone Ridge. When I drive out to investigate, there's nothing there. Just those carved names appearing on more trees. The list grows longer. Sergeant W. Parker, 15th Ohio Infantry. Corporal T. Davis, 23rd Pennsylvania Infantry. Union soldiers. Prisoners. I drive into town to visit Margaret Steele, our local historian. She's 78 years old and knows more about this mountain than anyone alive. Margaret, I need to ask you about Devil's Backbone, about what happened there during the Civil War. Her face goes pale. She pours us both coffee with shaking hands. Tom, there are some stories that shouldn't be told. People are getting hurt. I need to know. She sighs and pulls out a thick folder. Your great-great-grandfather, William Ridgway, was a Confederate sergeant. In 1864, his unit captured 47 Union soldiers trying to cross the mountain. They were ordered to execute them all. She shows me a faded photograph. Soldiers in gray uniforms standing over bodies lined up in neat rows. One of them looks just like my dad. They shot them at dawn, right where mile marker 7 is now. Threw the bodies in a mass grave. Margaret's voice drops to a whisper. But the dead don't always stay buried, Tom, especially when they died unjustly. What does this have to do with my family? Your great-great-grandfather led the firing squad. The debt passes down through blood. That night, I'm patrolling when I see him. A man standing in the middle of the road, wearing my grandfather's face but dressed in a Confederate uniform. I slam on the brakes and jump out of the car. Grandpa? He turns to look at me, and his eyes are deep black holes. Hello, Tommy. Been waiting for you. You're supposed to be dead. I am dead. Been dead for 31 years. But the mountain won't let me rest. Won't let any of us rest until the debt is paid. More figures step out of the trees. Dozens of them, all wearing Confederate gray. All with the same black hole eyes. What debt? What are you talking about? My grandfather points to the ground. The earth is shifting, pushing up. Bones appear in the dirt. Skulls, rib cages, 47 skeletons in Union blue. We murdered them, Tommy. Shot them down like dogs. Now we have to guard this road forever. Keep other innocent folks from dying here. Your daddy figured it out right before his accident. But I've been preventing accidents, my safety record. Your safety record is a lie, boy. Every accident you prevented cost a life. Every driver who made it home safe was balanced by a Ridgway death. That's how it works. That's how it's always worked. The truth hits me like a truck. My perfect safety record, my dedication to preventing accidents. It's all been powered by my family's blood. Dad died to save others. Grandpa died to save others. And now it's my turn. I won't do it, I tell him. I won't die for some 100-year-old crime I didn't commit. My grandfather shakes his head. You don't get to choose, Tommy. None of us did. The Union soldiers rise from their graves, still wearing their tattered blue uniforms. They don't look angry. They look sad, tired. One of them steps forward. He can't be older than 19. "Sergeant Ridgway, your family has served faithfully, but the scales must balance." "What scales?" 47 innocent men died on this mountain. 47 innocent lives must be saved in return. Your grandfather saved 15 before his time came. Your father saved 21. You've saved 11. I do the math in my head. That's 47 total. Yes, the debt is almost paid. But the guardian must remain to watch over the road. Guardian? My grandfather steps closer. We don't just die, Tommy. We become part of the mountain, part of the protection. Every Ridgway who died on this road is still here, still working to keep people safe. I look around and see them, ghostly figures in ranger uniforms, standing at attention along the roadside. My father, my grandfather, other Ridgways I never knew. But there has to be another way. "There is," says the young Union soldier. "You can choose to serve willingly. Accept the role of guardian instead of fighting it. The death will be painless, and your service will be conscious, not unconscious. And if I refuse? Then you die anyway, and your service begins without your knowledge or consent. The road will be protected, but you'll spend eternity confused and angry." I think about all the accident reports I've filled out, all the families who got to go home safe because of my perfect record, families I didn't even know I was saving. How long do I have to decide? My grandfather points to his watch. Dawn, same time we executed those soldiers. When the sun rises, one way or another, Thomas Ridgway joins his family. I have 3 hours. I spend them driving Devil's Backbone one last time, thinking about the life I'm about to leave behind. No wife, no kids. The curse made sure of that. Just 12 years of perfect service and a logbook full of lives saved. As the sky starts to lighten, I park at mile marker 7 and step out of the patrol car. They're all waiting for me. Confederate dead, Union dead, and 3 generations of Ridgway Rangers. "I'll do it," I say. "I'll be your guardian. But I want to know, will this end it? Will future Ridgways be free?" The young Union soldier nods. "The debt will be paid. The killing stops with you." The heart attack was quick, just like they promised. I felt a sharp pain in my chest, then nothing. When I opened my eyes, I was standing next to my body, wearing the same ranger uniform but somehow more real than I'd ever felt alive. My grandfather put his hand on my shoulder. "Welcome to the service, Tommy. The official report said I died of natural causes while on patrol. Genetic heart condition, they said. The same thing that killed my father and grandfather. At the funeral, they talked about my perfect safety record and dedicated service. Margaret Steele knew the truth, though. She performed a small ceremony at my grave, thanking both the Union dead and the Ridgway family for our sacrifice. Now I patrol Devil's Backbone every night, along with the others. We prevent accidents by guiding cars safely around dangerous curves, by making emergency phones work when they're needed, by warning deer away from the road during hunting season. ASIN. Sometimes living people see us. They report men in ranger uniforms, helping them change tires or directing traffic around accident sites. The reports always describe us as unusually helpful and professional, but no one can ever remember our faces clearly. 3 weeks after my death, my nephew David gets a letter informing him that he's inherited the ranger position. He's only 22, fresh out of college. The letter comes with the keys to the patrol car and my grandfather's old logbook. I want to warn him, but the rules don't work that way. He has to live his own life, make his own choices. The curse is broken. He won't die for the mountain's protection. But the Ridgway tradition of service continues. On his first night patrol, David stops at mile marker 7. He gets out of the car and looks around at the dark forest. For just a moment, I think he can sense us watching over him. "Uncle Tom?" he calls softly. "If you're out there, thanks for keeping the road safe." I can't answer him, but I can make sure he gets home safe that night. That's what guardians do. Every morning at dawn, when the sun rises over Devil's Backbone Ridge, I stand with the others and listen to the mountain breathe. 47 Union soldiers finally at peace. 3 generations of Ridgeways finally understanding their purpose. The debt is paid. The road is protected. And somewhere in the distance I can hear a radio crackling. This is the mountain speaking. We remember. We protect. We serve. The guardians are watching. The transmission echoes across the entire Appalachian chain, from ranger station to ranger station, reminding everyone who listens that some debts can only be paid in service, and some protection comes from beyond the grave. David writes in the logbook every day now, just like I did. But his entries are different. October 30th, 1989. Clear night. No accidents. Sometimes I feel like I'm not patrolling alone. He's right. He's never alone. None of us are. The mountain remembers everything, and the mountain protects its own. My name is Rebecca Whitmore, and I need to tell you what happened in Cherokee National Forest in the summer of 1974. I was the first woman ranger they ever hired in that part of Tennessee, and maybe I should have listened when the old-timers said the mountains didn't want me there. I was 29 and thought I was tough. Growing up poor in a trailer park will do that to you. My mama died when I was 12, and after that it was just me and my older brother until he ran off. I learned to take care of myself real quick, maybe too quick. The thing about being hungry as a kid is it never really leaves you. Even when I had plenty of food later, I still measured everything. Every bite, every calorie. I kept notebooks with what I ate written down to the gram. People thought it was weird, but it made me feel safe. Like I had control. When I got the ranger job, they stuck me at Research Station 2, way up on Cataract Ridge. It was just a small cabin with some scientific equipment, monitoring weather and wildlife. The nearest town was 40 miles down a dirt road, perfect for someone who liked being alone. But 1974 was the worst drought anyone could remember. By July, the streams were just cracked mud. The leaves on the trees turned brown and fell off like it was October. Every day I had to radio in temperature readings that kept getting higher and higher. The animals started acting strange first. I'd see deer just standing in clearings, not moving, like they were waiting for something. Bears would come right up to the cabin and stare at me through the windows. They looked skinny, but not normal skinny. Skinny like something was eating them from the inside. My daily routine kept me sane. Up at 6, check the weather instruments, eat exactly 1 cup of oatmeal with no sugar, measure my water for the day. Everything had to be exact. With the drought, supplies were running low. And I had to make everything last. The scales in my equipment room started acting up around the same time the animals got weird. The big scientific scale that weighed soil samples would show impossible numbers, like negative weights or weights that kept changing when nothing was on it. I figured it was the heat messing with the electronics. Then I started hearing sounds at night. Not animal sounds, more like chewing, like someone was outside the cabin, eating something crunchy. When I'd look out the windows with my flashlight, there was nothing there, just the dead brown forest. The worst part was the silence during the day. Forests are never really quiet, but this one was. No birds, no insects, no wind in the trees. Just this heavy, waiting quiet that made my skin crawl. Like the whole mountain was holding its breath. I tried to radio headquarters a few times to report the weird animal behavior, but the radio mostly just gave me static. When I did get through, they said other rangers were reporting similar things. Something about the drought making wildlife act different. They told me to keep monitoring and stay alert. That night I found bite marks on my cabin door. Big ones, like something with teeth the size of my thumb had been gnawing on the metal frame. But there were no tracks in the dusty ground, no sign that anything had been there at all. I should have left then. Should have packed up my gear and hiked back to town. But I was stubborn, and I had a job to do. Besides, where would something big enough to make those bite marks hide during the day? The forest was so dead and empty. That's what I told myself anyway. But deep down, I was starting to think the emptiness itself might be the problem. The next morning I found Dr. Maria Santos. I wasn't supposed to see her for another 2 weeks. She was a researcher from the university, studying how the drought affected plant life. Smart woman, spoke 3 languages, had more degrees than I had fingers. She was supposed to be working at a camp 15 miles north of me. But there she was, sitting, cross-legged on my front steps at dawn, eating tree bark. Not nibbling on it like someone lost in the woods might do, really eating it. Chewing and swallowing with this look on her face like it was the best meal she'd ever had. Her lips and teeth were stained brown from the bark, and her fingernails were bloody from clawing it off the trees. "Maria?" I called out, staying a safe distance back. "You okay?" She looked up at me, and her eyes were completely different. Still brown, still the same shape, but empty somehow, like looking into a deep well. "Becky," she said, and her voice was perfectly normal. "I've been waiting for you. Do you know what hunger tastes like?" That didn't make any sense, but nothing about this made sense. "Maria, when's the last time you ate? Real food, I mean." She smiled, and bits of bark fell out of her mouth. "Day 12 of the drought. I remember because I wrote it down. Day 12, and that's when I realized I was already empty." I backed toward my cabin door. Maria looked terrible. Her clothes hung loose like she'd lost 20 pounds in 2 weeks. Her skin was gray and waxy, and when she moved, her joints creaked like old floorboards. "Let me get you some food," I said. "Real food. I've got canned soup, crackers." "Food," she laughed, and the sound made my teeth hurt. "You think food will help? Look around you, Becky. Look at this place. The mountain is hungry, and hungry things eat." I glanced around at the dead forest, the brown grass, the trees with no leaves. Everything looked dried up and starved. Even the rocks seemed smaller somehow, like they were shrinking. "I need to radio for help," I said. "Get you to a doctor." But when I tried the radio, all I got was my own voice coming back through the static. "This is Station 2. This is your hunger speaking. Medical help for what? You're already empty." I switched off the radio real quick. That wasn't possible. The radio didn't work that way. When I turned around, Maria was gone. Just gone, like she'd never been there at all. But I could smell something sweet and rotting where she'd been sitting, and there were more bite marks in my wooden porch. That afternoon, an old Cherokee woman named Mary Sequoia hiked up to my station. She was maybe 70, but she climbed that mountain like she was 20. I'd seen her in town before. People said she knew things about the old ways, about the forest before white folks came. "You've seen her," Mary said without even saying hello. "The hungry one." I offered her water, but she shook her head. "How did you know?" "My grandmother lived through the drought of 1934, worst one before this. She told me stories about what happens when the rains stop for too long." Mary looked around my camp with worried eyes. She called it Kekla Kudla, the hungry spirit that wakes up when the earth gets thirsty. That's just a story, right? But even as I said it, I knew it wasn't. Mary pulled out a small leather pouch and scattered some kind of seeds around my cabin. Stories are how we remember dangerous things. My grandmother said during that drought, researchers and park workers started changing, got thin and strange, started eating things they shouldn't eat. Then they'd disappear into the caves up on the ridge. The caves. I'd seen them on my maps, but never explored them. They were marked as unstable, dangerous. What happened to them? They became something else. Something hungry. Mary finished with the seeds and looked at me seriously. "But here's the thing, child. It doesn't happen to everyone. Just people who already know what real hunger feels like. People who've been empty before." My stomach clenched. I thought about all those nights as a kid, going to bed with nothing to eat, about measuring every bite, controlling every meal, about the strange satisfaction I got from being hungry, like it proved I was strong. "How long do I have?" "Depends how empty you already are," Mary said, "and how much you fight it." After she left, I found my research notes from the past few weeks, except I didn't remember writing half of them. In my own handwriting, they described things I'd never seen. Animals eating each other alive, trees bleeding sap that tasted like meat, and at the bottom of the last page, Day 12 of drought. Subjects showing unprecedented cannibalistic behavior, including myself. I'd written those exact words, but I'd never studied any subjects. I was just a weather monitor, unless I was studying myself. 3 days later, I found the first body. It was what was left of a hiker from Knoxville. His driver's license was still in his wallet, but everything else was wrong. He'd been eaten, but not by any animal I knew. The bite marks were human-sized, but went too deep, like whoever did it had teeth like a shark. The weird part was how neat it all looked. Like someone had carefully taken just the parts they wanted and left the rest arranged nice and tidy. His bones were stacked in a little pyramid. His clothes were folded and placed on a rock. Even his car keys were lined up in a straight row. I should have hiked down to town right then. Should have reported it and let someone else figure out what was happening up here. But I kept thinking about what Mary said, about people who already knew hunger. That night, I dreamed I was eating my own fingers. In the dream, they tasted like the best food I'd ever had, and I woke up with my hand halfway to my mouth. There were teeth marks on my knuckles, though I couldn't remember biting myself. The next morning, Maria came back. This time she looked even worse. Her hair was falling out in patches, and her skin was so pale I could see her veins underneath, but she was smiling like she'd just won the lottery. "I found it, Becky," she said. "The source. It's beautiful." "Found what?" "The hungry place. The cave where it lives." "Sha." He grabbed my arm with fingers that felt like ice. "It wants to show you. It's been waiting so long for someone who understands." I should have said no. Should have locked myself in the cabin and waited for help, but I was curious now, and hungry. I hadn't eaten anything in 2 days, but instead of feeling weak, I felt strong. Stronger than I'd ever felt. We hiked up to the ridge to a cave entrance I'd somehow never noticed before. It was big enough to walk into, but so dark I couldn't see the back even with my flashlight. The air coming out of it smelled sweet and rotten, like meat that's gone bad but somehow still makes your mouth water. "It's down there," Maria whispered. "The heart of the hungry mountain. It's been sleeping for 40 years, but the drought woke it up." As we got closer to the cave, my radio started making noise again. But this time it wasn't static. It was voices. Dozens of voices, all talking at once, all saying the same thing. Come down and feed. Come down and be full." "Those are all the people who came before," Maria said. "All the rangers and researchers and hikers who found this place during drought years. They're still here, still hungry." I wanted to run, but my legs kept walking toward the cave. It wasn't like I was being controlled exactly. More like I was finally going where I'd always wanted to go. At the cave mouth, Maria stopped. "I can't go any further," she said. "I'm not empty enough yet." "But you are, aren't you, Becky? You've been empty your whole life." She was right. I had been. Even when I had food, even when I was safe, there was always this hollow feeling inside me. This sense that I was never really full, never really satisfied. "What's down there?" "The thing that makes the hunger," Maria said. "The thing that's been calling to you since you were a little girl going to bed with no supper. It knows you, Becky. It's been waiting for you." I walked into the cave alone. The tunnel sloped down for what felt like miles. My flashlight beam seemed to get weaker the deeper I went until I was walking in, almost total darkness. But somehow I could still see. Not with my eyes exactly, but with something else. Some new sense that let me feel the shape of the cave walls and the texture of the air. The voices on my radio got louder the deeper I went. I started to recognize some of them. A park ranger who'd disappeared in 1962, a geology student from 1968, a family of campers from 1971, all talking about how hungry they were, how good it felt to finally eat. At the bottom of the tunnel, the cave opened up into a huge chamber, and there, in the center, was the thing Maria had called beautiful. It was 12 feet tall and looked like a person who'd been starved for 100 years. Its skin was stretched tight over bones that stuck out at weird angles. Its stomach was huge and round, like it was pregnant, but the rest of it was nothing but bone and sinew. The worst part was its face, or faces. Under its translucent skin, I could see dozens of human faces, all the people it had eaten over the years. They were moving around under there, their mouths opening and closing like they were still trying to talk. Finally, it said, and its voice was every hungry person who'd ever lived. "I've been dreaming of you, Rebecca Whitmore. You taste like home." That's when I understood. This thing, this Kekle Kudle, didn't just eat people. It turned them into itself. Every drought, when people got desperate and hungry enough, they'd find their way down here. And instead of being killed, they'd become part of the mountain's hunger. "I know what you are," I said, though my voice sounded small in the huge cave. "Do you?" The creature smiled, and I saw my own teeth in its mouth. "I'm every meal you never got as a child. I'm every bite you counted as an adult. I'm the hunger you've been feeding your whole life." It was right. I had been feeding it. Every time I went to bed hungry by choice, every time I measured my food and found satisfaction in having less, I'd been making it stronger. "And now it's time to stop being hungry," the creature said. "Time to join us. Time to be full." Around the edges of the chamber, I could see them. All the people who'd come before. They were part of the cave walls now, their bodies stretched and changed, but still somehow alive, still conscious, still hungry. "All you have to do is eat," the creature said. "Just one bite. Of anything. Of anyone. And you'll never be hungry again." It gestured to the corner, where Maria sat waiting. She looked at me with pleading eyes, but I could tell she wanted me to do it. Wanted me to take that first bite so she could stop fighting the hunger too. The creature was right. I had been empty my whole life, and I was so tired of being empty. I took a step toward Maria. But then I remembered something Mary Sequoia had said. It doesn't happen to everyone. Just people who already know what real hunger feels like. I'd thought she meant it chose people who'd been hungry before, but now I realized she meant something else. It could only take people who had already given up fighting their hunger, people who had decided that being empty was easier than risking being disappointed. I'd been fighting hunger my whole life, but not the way I thought. I hadn't been controlling it. I'd been surrendering to it. Every measured meal, every counted calorie, every night I chose to go to bed still wanting more. I'd been practicing for this moment. "No," I said. The creature's face changed, and suddenly it wasn't beautiful and terrible anymore. It just looked confused. "No." I said no. I backed away from Maria, even though every instinct in my body was screaming at me to eat something. Anything. "I'm not doing this." "But you're so empty," the creature said, and now it sounded almost sad. "You've been empty for so long. Don't you want to be full?" Not like this. My stomach was cramping so bad I could barely stand, but I kept backing toward the tunnel entrance. Not by eating someone else. The creature followed me, moving with that strange, jerky walk of someone who's been starved too long. "You don't understand. The mountain needs this. The drought makes everything hungry, the plants, the animals, the rocks themselves. I take that hunger into myself so the rest can survive." Maybe that was even true. Maybe in some twisted way this thing was trying to help. But I couldn't do it. "Then the mountain stays hungry," I said. I ran for the tunnel. Behind me, the creature let out a sound like every empty stomach in the world growling at once. The cave walls started to shake, and I could hear rocks falling somewhere in the darkness. All around me, the voices on my radio were screaming now, begging me to come back, to feed them, to end their hunger. But I kept running. The tunnel seemed longer going up than it had going down. My flashlight flickered and died, but I could still see somehow. The hunger was giving me strength, making me faster and stronger than I should have been. Maybe that was its gift. Maybe that was how it helped people survive. When I finally made it outside, the sun was setting. Maria was waiting for me by the cave entrance, but she looked different now. More solid. More real. "You didn't do it," she said. "No." "Good." She smiled, and this time it looked like her real smile. "I was hoping you wouldn't." "What happens now?" Maria looked back at the cave. "It goes back to sleep, I think, until the next drought. Until the next person who's hungry enough finds their way down there." We hiked back to my station in the dark. My stomach was still cramping, and I was dizzy from not eating, but I felt more clear-headed than I had in weeks, like waking up from a fever dream. "How long were you fighting it?" I asked Maria. "Since the day I got here. But I'm not empty enough, like I told you. I get hungry, but I don't live hungry. Not like you do." She was right. I had been living hungry my whole life, mistaking control for strength, thinking that wanting less made me more powerful. But real strength wasn't about controlling hunger. It was about choosing what to feed it. When we got back to my cabin, Mary Sequoia was waiting for us. She had a fire going and was cooking something that smelled like the most amazing thing I'd ever imagined. "Rabbit stew," she said, "made with the old prayers. It'll help you remember what food is supposed to be for." I almost said no, almost fell back into my old pattern of measuring and controlling and choosing to stay empty. But instead I sat down by the fire and let Mary fill a bowl for me. It was the best meal of my life. Not because I was starving, though I was, but because for the first time in 20 years I was eating without fear, without counting, without trying to stay empty. "The mountain will remember you," Mary said as we ate. "Next time the drought comes, it'll call to you first." "Will I be able to resist it again?" "That depends," she said, "on whether you keep feeding yourself or go back to feeding your hunger." The drought broke 3 days later. It didn't rain gradually, the way weather usually changes. One morning the sky was clear and blue, and by afternoon it was pouring so hard you couldn't see 10 feet in any direction. The rain fell for 6 straight days, filling up the streams and turning the brown grass green again. When it was over, the forest looked like a completely different place. Birds were singing, insects were buzzing, even the air smelled different, alive instead of empty. I hiked back up to the cave once, just to see. The entrance was still there, but smaller somehow, and when I listened carefully, I couldn't hear any voices coming from inside. Just the sound of water dripping somewhere deep in the mountain. Maria decided to stay in the area to continue her research. She said she wanted to document how quickly the ecosystem recovered from extreme drought, but I think she really stayed to keep an eye on that cave, to watch for signs that the thing inside was waking up again. I finished my season at the research station and then requested a transfer to a different forest. Not because I was scared exactly, but because I needed to learn how to live differently, how to eat without measuring, how to be full without being afraid. It took years. I had to retrain myself to recognize real hunger instead of the fake hunger I'd been feeding for so long. I had to learn that taking care of myself wasn't the same as controlling myself. Most importantly, I had to learn that some kinds of emptiness can't be filled by staying empty. I never became what you'd call a normal eater. The habits of a lifetime don't just disappear. But I learned to tell the difference between choosing not to eat and being afraid to eat, between being satisfied and being starved. Sometimes, during bad droughts, I still feel it calling. Not just from Cherokee National Forest, but from dry places all over the country. Mary was right. The mountain remembers me. And now I know it's not the only mountain with something hungry living inside it. I keep in touch with weather services across the Appalachians now. When drought conditions get severe, when rainfall drops below critical levels, I send warnings to park services and research stations. I don't explain everything because they wouldn't believe me, but I tell them to watch for signs of unusual behavior in isolated personnel, to check on people who are alone too long in empty places. Most of the time, it's just normal drought stress. But sometimes, maybe once every few years, I get a report that sounds familiar. A researcher who stops eating regular food, a ranger who starts hearing voices on the radio, a weather station that records impossible readings. When that happens, I drive out to wherever it is, and I bring Mary Sequoia if I can. We don't always get there in time. Some people are too hungry to save, too empty to choose fullness. But sometimes we do. The thing about hunger is that it's patient. It can wait 40 years between droughts, 40 years between opportunities. But it never really goes away. It just sleeps, deep in the dark places, waiting for the rain to stop and the emptiness to return. And there are more of those dark places than you might think. More mountains with caves that go down too deep. More empty spaces where hungry things wait for hungry people. That's why I'm telling you this story. not to scare you, but to warn you. If you find yourself in a drought, in an empty place, and you start hearing voices telling you to come down into the dark, remember that you have a choice. You can feed the hunger, or you can feed yourself, but you can't do both. The creature in the cave was wrong about one thing. I'm not empty anymore. Haven't been for 20 years. I'm full of good food and clean water and people I care about and work that matters. But I still remember what emptiness feels like. And that's how I know the difference. If you ever find yourself alone in a dry place, listening to voices that promise you'll never be hungry again, remember this story. Remember that being full isn't about having everything you want. It's about knowing what you really need. And if you hear something calling to you from deep in the earth, something that sounds like every hungry night you've ever lived through, walk away. There are better ways to fill yourself up. Trust me on this. I know. On. My name is Mike Hawthorne, and I've been a ranger in Pisgah National Forest for 20 years. People think it's a peaceful job, hiking trails, helping lost campers, maybe fighting the odd forest fire. They don't know about the rescues. They don't know about the nights when someone doesn't make it home. I wake up at 4:30 every morning, same as always. Check my gear, test the radio, look over the weather reports 3 times. My wife Sarah used to joke that I treated my rescue equipment like a priest treats his Bible. She stopped joking about it 5 years ago. The mirror in our bathroom is cracked right down the middle. Sarah keeps asking me to fix it, but I can't stand to look at myself whole anymore. Split down the middle feels about right. I drive the winding mountain roads to the ranger station while it's still dark. These mountains have been here for millions of years, but the roads are new, cut through rock and forest in the 1960s when tourism started bringing money to western North Carolina. The Cherokee who lived here first knew better paths, paths that followed the land instead of fighting it. My radio crackles to life as I pull into the parking lot. Mike, we got a situation up on Looking Glass Rock. Climber fell. Partner can't reach him. You available? I key the mic. On my way. This is what I do. This is what I'm good at, most of the time. The drive up to Looking Glass Rock takes 40 minutes on Forest Service roads that weren't built for speed. My truck bounces over roots and rocks while my gear rattles in the back. Rescue rope, medical kit, climbing harness, everything checked and rechecked this morning like every morning. The worried partner meets me at the trailhead. Young guy, maybe 25, wearing brand new climbing gear that still has store tags. He fell about 30 feet, he says, wringing his hands. I can hear him calling, but I can't get down to where he is. What's your friend's name, I ask, shouldering my pack. Kyle Morrison. My hands freeze on the straps. That's not possible. Kyle Morrison died 5 years ago. I shake my head. Common name. Lots of Kyles in the world. Let's go get him. The trail to Looking Glass Rock is steep and rocky. The young climber, he tells me his name is Danny, keeps talking to fill the nervous silence. We drove up from Charlotte yesterday. Kyle said he knew this route, said he'd climbed it before. He's really experienced. We hike for an hour before I hear the voice calling from below the cliff face. Help! Danny, I'm hurt bad! The voice carries up from the rocks below, echoing off the granite walls. There's something familiar about it that makes my chest tight. When we reach the edge and I look down, my hands start shaking. The climber hanging from the rope 40 feet below has dark hair and a red jacket, just like Kyle Morrison wore 5 years ago. But that's impossible. Kyle Morrison is dead. I should know. I'm the one who didn't save him. Kyle, Danny shouts down. Mike's here. The ranger's going to get you. I clip into my anchor points and rappel down, trying to focus on the job. Just another rescue. Just another climber who got in over his head. But as I get closer, the resemblance becomes impossible to ignore. Same face, same build, same scar on his left hand from where he cut himself on his car keys. A detail I remembered from the accident report 5 years ago. Thank God you came, he says when I reach him. I knew you'd come for me this time. This time. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. Let's get you checked out, I say, trying to keep my voice steady. I run through the medical assessment. No broken bones, mild concussion, some scrapes and bruises. Standard climbing accident injuries. Nothing that would explain why. He looks exactly like a dead man. As I set up the rescue system, Kyle keeps talking. I've been waiting so long, Mike. Waiting for you to make the right choice. I don't know what you mean, I lie, but my hands are shaking as I work the ropes. July 15th, 1977, he says quietly. Mount Mitchell. There were 3 of us hanging from different ropes after the rockfall. You could only reach one of us at a time. My heart stops. Nobody knows those details. The official report was classified. The families were told it was equipment failure. You chose the 2 who were easier to reach, Kyle continues. Left me for last. But by the time you got to me, you died, I whisper. You died because I made a tactical decision. Save who you can save. I know why you did it, Kyle says. But I need you to understand something, Mike. This isn't punishment. This is a chance. I finish rigging the haul system with muscle memory, my mind reeling. When we reach the top, Danny helps pull his friend over the edge. But when I look at Kyle in full daylight, he looks wrong. Too pale. His eyes don't quite focus on anything. And when he speaks, I can see the forest behind him through his mouth. Thanks for not leaving me this time, Kyle says, and then he walks into the trees and disappears. Danny stares at the spot where his climbing partner vanished. Where did he go? I don't have an answer. I radio back to base and report a successful rescue, but I don't mention that the victim walked away. I don't mention that he looked like a ghost. I don't mention that he knew things he couldn't possibly know. That night, I sit in my truck in the ranger station parking lot, staring at my radio. The official records say Kyle Morrison died on Mount Mitchell in 1977. 3 climbers caught in a rockfall. I reached Tom Bradley first. He was closest and had the simplest rigging. Then Maria Santos. Her anchor was solid, but she was losing blood fast. By the time I got to Kyle Morrison, he'd been hanging for over an hour in North Carolina summer heat. Dehydration, shock, and a head injury. Yuri that got worse while he waited. I made the right tactical decision. Any rescue manual would back me up. Save who you can save in the order that gives you the best chance of saving the most people. But lying in bed that night, all I can hear is Kyle's voice. This is a chance. A chance for what? The next morning, my radio starts acting up. Static and interference. Voices that fade in and out. I'm halfway through my morning equipment check when it crackles to life with perfect clarity. Mike, why didn't you come for me first? It's Kyle's voice. No doubt about it now. I key the mic with shaking hands. Who is this? You know who this is. The question is, do you know where you are? I look around the ranger station. Same building I've worked in for 20 years. Same mountains rising up on all sides. Same cracked mirror in the bathroom reflecting my split face back at me. But something's wrong. The calendar on the wall says July 15th, 1977. That's not possible. It was July 20th, 1982 yesterday. I walk outside and check my truck. The radio is the old model we used in the 70s. My gear in the back is older too. Rope that I replaced 3 years ago. A medical kit that went out of date in 1979. The radio crackles again. Mike, we got a situation up on Mount Mitchell. 3 climbers caught in a rockfall. You available? This is impossible. This already happened. This is the day Kyle Morrison died. But I key the mic anyway. On my way. The drive to Mount Mitchell takes 2 hours on mountain roads that seem more familiar than they should. I know every turn, every pothole, every place where the trees close in overhead. I've driven this route before, 5 years ago, but also yesterday, but also right now. When I reach the trailhead, the scene is exactly as I remember it. 3 climbers rappelling down a cliff face when loose rock gave way above them. All 3 cause. Ached in the fall, hanging from their ropes, injured and trapped. Tom Bradley hangs closest to my anchor point. Simple rescue. I can have him up in 10 minutes. Maria Santos is 30 feet to the right, bleeding from a head wound but conscious and talking. Kyle Morrison is 40 feet to the left, the hardest to reach, hanging from a rope that's already showing signs of wear. I know how this goes. I reach Tom first, quick and easy, then Maria. More complicated rigging, but I get her up before she loses too much blood. Then Kyle. But Kyle is already looking at me with those pale, unfocused eyes. "This is your chance, Mike. Do it differently this time." "I can't," I call down to him. "If I go to you first, the others might die while I'm rigging the complicated anchor." "They won't," Kyle says. "Trust me." Tom Bradley is yelling for help. Maria Santos is bleeding. Kyle Morrison is hanging from a fraying rope 40 feet away. Standard rescue protocol says save the most you can save. Start with the easiest. But Kyle's voice carries up from the rocks. "This is your chance." I clip into the hardest anchor point and rappel toward Kyle Morrison. The rigging takes 20 minutes, twice as long as it should have. When I finally get Kyle clipped in and start hauling him up, I'm sweating and shaking. In the distance, I can hear Tom and Maria calling for help. But when I reach the top with Kyle, something impossible happens. Tom and Maria are already there, standing at the cliff edge, uninjured and whole. "How did you get up here?" I ask. Tom shrugs. "Some other ranger got us. Nice guy. Said his name was Mike, too." I turn to look at Kyle, but he's gone again. Just vanished into the forest like he did yesterday. My radio crackles. "Mike, good work on Mount Mitchell. All 3 victims rescued successfully. See you back at base." But that's not my voice on the radio. That's my voice from 5 years ago, from the timeline where I chose differently. I drive back to the ranger station in a daze. When I get there, the calendar says July 20th, 1982. My gear is back to normal. The mirror in the bathroom is still cracked, but now I can see Kyle Morrison's face looking back at me instead of my own. "What do you want from me?" I ask the reflection. "I want you to understand," Kyle's voice comes from the mirror. The Cherokee call them Nunahai, the immortal ones. They live in the mountains, and sometimes they try to help humans learn important lessons. What lesson? That guilt is just another trap, Mike. Just another rockfall that leaves you hanging from a rope, waiting for someone to save you. That night, I drive up to Cherokee territory to find Patricia Cumberland. She's a ranger too, but she works the cultural sites, the places where her ancestors lived before the government moved them west in the 1830s. If anyone knows about the Nunahai, it's Patricia. I find her at the Oconaluftee village after hours, sitting by a reconstructed fire pit, reading by flashlight. "Mike Hawthorne," she says before I can introduce myself. "I've been expecting you." "You have?" "The mountains have been talking about you. The spirits are worried." I sit down across from her. "The spirits?" Patricia looks up at the ridgeline around us. "The Nunahai aren't ghosts, Mike. They're the mountain's way of protecting itself. And right now, the mountain is in danger." She pulls out a manila folder full of papers. Geological surveys, mining permits, environmental impact studies. Consolidated Mining wants to strip mine the whole ridge from here to Mount Mitchell. They've been blasting test holes for 6 months. "What does that have to do with Kyle Morrison?" "Everything," Patricia says. "The Nunahai can see through time, past, present, future. They know what's coming. The mining will cause a catastrophic collapse. Dozens of people will die." She hands me one of the geological reports. "Look at the date. July 15th, 1987, 5 years in the future." "That's impossible." "Oh, is it?" Patricia asks. "You've been living the same rescue over and over, trying to save everyone. The Nunahai are showing you what happens when someone actually does make the right choice, even when it seems impossible." I stare at the report. Projected casualties from mining-related landslides. 47 dead, 120 injured. The disaster zone includes every major climbing area in the forest. "The Kyle you've been seeing isn't the Kyle who died in 1977, Patricia continues. "He's what Kyle could have become if he'd lived. The Nunahai created him to teach you something important." "What?" "That some choices seem impossible until someone makes them." As she speaks, the fire pit begins to glow, even though there's no fire in it. Around us, The forest fills with soft voices speaking Cherokee. Translucent figures emerge from the trees, dozens of them, all looking at me with calm, patient eyes. The Nunahai want you to stop the mining, Patricia says. But first, they need you to forgive yourself for the choice you made in 1977. Kyle Morrison steps out of the glowing fire pit. He looks solid now, real, alive. I never blamed you, Mike. The only person who couldn't forgive Mike Hawthorne was Mike Hawthorne. But you died because of my decision. I died because of a rockfall, Kyle says gently. You saved 2 people that day. That's not failure. That's heroism. Around us, the Nunahai begin to fade back into the forest. But Kyle remains, becoming more solid with each passing moment. The mining company breaks ground tomorrow, Patricia says, checking her watch. If someone doesn't stop them, a lot more people than 3 will die in these mountains. Kyle nods toward the Forest Service radio in my truck. This is your chance, Mike. Do it differently this time. I spend the rest of the night making phone calls. Environmental groups, news stations, the State Geological Survey, anyone who might be able to halt the mining operation. But it's not enough. Consolidated Mining has all the permits they need, and they're starting work at dawn. As the sun rises, I drive. Up to the mining site. Heavy equipment is already moving into position. Bulldozers, excavators, drill rigs. Men in hard hats are setting up the first blast pattern. I park my truck across the access road and get out. The site foreman storms over, red-faced and angry. You can't park there, this is private property. Actually, it's national forest land leased to your company, I tell him. And as a federal ranger, I have the authority to halt operations if I observe unsafe conditions. What unsafe conditions? I pull out Patricia's geological reports, the ones dated 5 years in the future, the ones that predict dozens of deaths. These mountains are unstable. Your blasting will trigger landslides. The foreman looks at the reports and laughs. These are dated 1987, buddy. It's 1982. You trying to pull some kind of scam? But Kyle Morrison is standing behind him now, solid and real and alive. He takes the reports from my hands and walks over to the lead geologist. Dr. Martinez, you need to see this. These surveys show exactly what your underground radar detected yesterday. Massive fractures in the bedrock that your company didn't report. Dr. Martinez looks at Kyle confused. Who are you? You're not on my team. I'm someone who cares about these mountains, Kyle says, and someone who knows what happens when good people make hard choices. He hands her the reports. As she reads, her face goes white. Jesus Christ, she whispers. If these projections are accurate, the entire ridge could collapse. Within an hour, the site is evacuated. Within a week, Consolidated Mining's permits are revoked. The investigation reveals that the company knew about the geological instability but chose to proceed anyway, betting they could extract their profits before any disasters occurred. Kyle and I stand on the ridge where the mining operation was supposed to begin, looking out over the forest that stretches to the horizon. So, what happens now? I ask. Now you get to find out what the rest of your life looks like, Kyle says, without carrying me around. Everywhere you go. Are you really alive? Kyle smiles. I'm as alive as I need to be. The Nunahai gave me enough existence to help you save these mountains. That's all I ever wanted. To know that my death meant something. It always meant something, I tell him. You died helping other people climb safely. That's worth honoring. So is letting go of guilt that doesn't serve anyone, Kyle says, including me. He starts to fade around the edges, becoming translucent again. The Cherokee have a word, Giahe. It means spirits who can't rest while sacred places suffer. I can rest now, Mike. The mountains are safe. Will I see you again? Every time you look in a mirror, Kyle says. But now you'll see Mike Hawthorne looking back. Not the ranger who failed, but the ranger who saved everyone. He vanishes into the morning light, leaving me alone on the ridge. When I drive back to the ranger station, The cracked mirror in the bathroom shows only my own face, whole and unbroken. The calendar says July 25th, 1982, and my radio plays nothing but standard Park Service communications. But sometimes, on quiet mornings when the mist rises from the valleys, I hear voices in Cherokee carried on the wind. The Nunihi are still here, still watching over their mountains. And sometimes, when I'm leading a particularly difficult rescue, I feel Kyle Morrison standing beside me, not as a ghost or a regret, but as a reminder that saving people means making hard choices and living with the consequences. The mountains remember everything, but they also know when it's time to let go. Mike Hawthorne served as a ranger in Pisgah National Forest until his retirement in 2003. The Cherokee Cultural Center now includes his story as part of their oral history project documenting Nunahai encounters. Mount Mitchell and Looking Glass Rock remain popular climbing destinations, protected from development in perpetuity. Consolidated Mining Company was dissolved in 1983 following federal investigation into fraudulent geological reporting. No charges were filed against individual executives. Kyle Morrison is remembered on a memorial plaque at the Mount Mitchell Ranger Station. In honor of those who gave their lives helping others experience the wilderness safely. My name is James Caldwell, but everyone calls me Jimmy. I've been a park ranger at Monongahela National Forest for 16 years now, and I thought I'd seen everything these West Virginia mountains had to offer. Bears, lost hikers, the occasional drunk camper, all part of the job. But what happened last November changed everything I thought I knew about these woods. I should tell you about my girls first. Lucy's 8 and Emma's 6, and they're the whole world to me. Their mother and I are going through a messy divorce, fighting over who gets to keep them. I work double shifts trying to prove I'm the better parent. Maybe that's why I missed the signs at first. I was too busy worrying about custody hearings to notice the forest going quiet. It was a Tuesday morning in late November, the kind where your breath hangs in the air like smoke. I was doing my usual patrol of the Dolly Sods area, checking the weather station and making sure the camping spots were clean. Families love bringing their kids up there on weekends. The plateau's beautiful, all open meadows and rocky outcrops, perfect for teaching children about nature. I parked my truck at the trailhead and grabbed my thermos of coffee. The radio crackled as I did my morning check-in with headquarters. Base, this is Ranger 7, starting patrol of Dolly Sods. Weather's clear, temperature 20 degrees. Static filled the radio for a moment. Then I heard something that made my blood run cold. Children's laughter. Not just any laughter. My daughter's laughter. Lucy's giggle, high and musical, followed by Emma's deeper chuckle. But that was impossible. They were 200 miles away with their mother. Base, did you copy that transmission? I said into the radio. Copy what, Ranger 7? You just checked in. All clear here. I stared at the radio. The static was forming words now, faint but unmistakable. Dad, Dee's coming home. My hands shook as I clipped the radio back to my belt. Must be interference from somewhere. These mountains played tricks with signals sometimes. I started up the trail, trying to shake off the weird feeling in my stomach. The forest was too quiet. No birds singing, no squirrels chattering, no wind in the trees. Even my footsteps seemed muffled, like the silence was thick as cotton. About a mile up the trail, I found the first campsite. Someone had left their gear behind, sleeping bags, backpacks, even a still warm campfire. But something was wrong with how it was arranged. The sleeping bags were lined up in a perfect row, like railroad cars. The tent stakes had been driven into the ground in a straight line, exactly the same distance apart. It looked like a mining operation. I knelt down beside the fire pit and noticed footprints in the frost. Small ones, child-sized. But here's what made my skin crawl. The prints were perfect. No smudging, no signs that whoever made them was cold. In 20-degree weather, a kid's feet would be moving, shuffling, trying to stay warm. These prints looked like they'd been pressed into the ground by someone who didn't feel the cold at all. The prints led toward the bog at the center of the plateau. I followed them, my heart beating faster with each step. The silence was getting worse, pressing against my ears until I could taste the fear in my mouth. That's when the temperature dropped 30 degrees in 5 seconds. My breath came out in huge puffs. Frost formed on my jacket, and somewhere in the distance, I heard the sound of children singing. An old song, something from way back. Work songs, the kind miners used to sing in the tunnels. But there were no mines up here. Never had been. I grabbed my radio with numb fingers. "Base, this is Ranger 7. I need backup at Dolly Sod's immediately." The radio crackled, and my own voice answered me. "Ranger 7, this is Ranger 7. Backup is already here. We've been waiting for you." I dropped the radio like it was on fire. It hit the ground and went silent, the LED display flickering once before going dark. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in the awful quiet of the forest. This wasn't right. Nothing about this was right. I picked up the radio and tried again. Dead. Not even static. I checked my cell phone. No signal, which wasn't unusual up here, but somehow it felt different now. Like the mountains themselves were cutting me off from the world. The singing was getting closer. Children's voices, maybe a dozen of them, harmonizing on some old tune I couldn't quite place. It sounded familiar, like something my grandfather might have hummed when I was little. I followed the sound toward the bog, every instinct screaming at me to turn around and get back to my truck. But I'm a ranger. People might be in trouble. Kids might be in trouble. The bog stretched out in front of me, dark water reflecting the gray sky. Cattails and marsh grass swayed in a breeze I couldn't feel. And there, standing in a perfect circle around the water's edge, was a Boy Scout troop. 12 boys, maybe 10 or 11 years old, wearing merit badge sashes and neckerchiefs. They stood perfectly still, their backs to me, singing that work song in voices that carried no warmth. Their breath didn't steam in the cold air. "Boys," I called out. "Boys, are you okay?" They stopped singing all at once, like someone had flipped a switch, but they didn't turn around. I walked closer, my boots squelching in the marshy ground. "Where's your troop leader? You shouldn't be out here alone." That's when I saw him. A man in his 40s wearing a scout leader uniform, sitting on a fallen log about 20 feet from the boys. His head was in his hands and his whole body was shaking. "Sir, are you all right?" He looked up at me, and I saw tears frozen on his cheeks. "They came singing," he whispered. "My boys. They just started singing along. Work so, but they've never heard those songs before." I crouched down beside him. His lips were blue with cold, but the boys showed no signs of being affected by the temperature. "How long have you been out here?" "Since dawn, maybe longer. Time feels strange." He pointed at the boys with a trembling hand. "They won't respond to me anymore. They just sing and stare at the water." I stood up and approached the circle of scouts. "Boys, I'm Ranger Caldwell. I need you to come with me now." The boy nearest to me turned around. My knees almost buckled. It was a child, yes, but his skin was pale as winter moonlight, and where his eyes should have been were empty sockets that reflected the gray sky like deep pools. Coal dust streaked his cheeks. "Daddy," he said in a voice like wind through mine shafts, "why didn't you save us from the dark?" I stumbled backward. The voice, it was different now, higher. A little girl's voice. The boy's face was changing, becoming softer, more familiar, becoming my Emma's face, but wrong. So terribly wrong. "Emma," I whispered. "You promised you'd take us camping, Daddy. You promised we'd see the mountains together." I was dreaming. Had to be dreaming. Emma was safe at home with her mother. This was just some kind of breakdown from stress, from working too hard, from missing my girls too much. But the other boys were turning around now, one by one. All of them had those empty, reflecting eyes. All of them wore the same coal dust on their pale faces. And as they faced me, they began to change. Some became girls. Some became children I didn't recognize. But their clothes were all wrong. Old-fashioned mining clothes, canvas pants and rough shirts, boots caked with underground mud. "We've been waiting for you," they said in unison, their voices echoing strangely. "We've been waiting for a daddy who would keep the families away from the dark place." Justo, the scout leader, grabbed my arm. "Run!" he gasped. "Something's wrong with this place. Something's been wrong for a long time." But I couldn't move, because now I could see my Lucy too, standing among the hollow children. She wore a mining helmet that was too big for her head, and her small hands were dirty with coal dust. "Lucy, baby, what are you doing here?" She smiled at me, but no warmth reached her empty eyes. "We've been calling you on the radio, Daddy. Didn't you hear us? We said you were coming home." The temperature dropped another 10 degrees. The bog water began to freeze at the edges, ice creeping out in perfect geometric patterns. And somewhere deep underground, I heard the sound of pickaxes striking stone. I grabbed the scout leader's arm and hauled him to his feet. "We're leaving, now." "But the boys, those aren't your boys anymore." We ran. I don't care how that sounds. 2 grown men running from a bunch of kids. But those things standing by the bog weren't kids. Not anymore. Behind us, the singing started again. Not just the 12 scouts now, but dozens of voices. Children's voices rising from the bog, from the forest, from somewhere deep under the ground. The work song echoed off the mountains until it seemed like the whole world was filled with it. We crashed through the underbrush, heading back toward the trail. My lungs burned in the cold air, and beside me the scout leader was wheezing like he might collapse. "What's your name?" I panted as we ran. Mark Peterson, Troop 847 from Charleston." He stumbled over a root but kept going. "We've been camping here every year for 5 years. Nothing like this has ever happened before." We reached the main trail and I stopped, hands on my knees, trying to catch my breath. The singing had faded, but the silence that replaced it was almost worse. No wind, no animal sounds, no life at all. "My truck's about a mile down this trail," I said. "We get there, we radio for help, we get out of here." Mark nodded, but I could see the fear in his eyes, the same fear that was eating at my gut. We started walking fast down the trail. Every shadow looked like a child. Every movement in the corner of my eye made me flinch. The temperature kept dropping until our breath came out in thick clouds. That's when I noticed the footprints. They were everywhere now. Small, bare feet in the frost, running alongside the trail, crisscrossing our path. Dozens of them. And they were all leading the same direction we were going. "Mark," I said quietly, "don't look down." He looked down anyway, cursed under his breath. "They're surrounding us," he whispered. The footprints formed a loose circle around us as we walked, staying just at the edge of the trees. I could feel them out there, watching us. My daughters, the scout boys, God knew how many others. A branch snapped somewhere to our left, then another to our right. "Keep walking," I said. "Don't run, don't look, just keep walking." But Mark had stopped dead in his tracks. Oh Jesus Christ. I followed his gaze and felt my blood turn to ice water. Standing in the middle of the trail, maybe 50 feet ahead, was an old Cherokee man. He wore traditional clothes, leather and beads, but his face was painted with coal dust in patterns I didn't recognize. In his hands was a bundle of burning tobacco, the smoke rising straight up in the still air. "White man," he called out, his voice carrying clearly in the silence, "you walk on angry ground." I'd heard about Joseph Crowfeather from the other rangers. He was a local elder who sometimes helped with search and rescue operations. But what was he doing up here? We approached him slowly. The tobacco smoke smelled sweet and clean, cutting through the cold, dead air of the forest. "Joseph?" I said. "Joseph Crowfeather?" He nodded. "The children called me here. Gatlev quo du. The spirits of little ones who died in darkness. They don't rest when their deaths served on holy money." "What do you mean?" Joseph's eyes were sad and old. "This place is a wound, Ranger. A wound in the earth that never healed. The children who died in the mines they remember, and when the white man cuts deeper into the mountains, they wake up." Mark was shivering so hard he could barely speak. "Mines?" There are no mines up here. Not now, Joseph said. But once, yes. 1923. Cave-in trapped 47 miners. 17 of them were children working to feed their families. Company sealed the mine entrance rather than dig them out. Said it would cost too much money. I felt something cold crawl up my spine. Where was this mine? Joseph pointed directly at the bog we'd just escaped from. Right there, where the water is now. The bog formed when the mine flooded. The singing started again, closer now, all around us. They choose fathers, Joseph continued, never taking his eyes off mine. Men who love their children enough to protect them forever. They offer you a choice, Ranger. Join them and keep other families away from the mountain. Or refuse and watch them take your daughters anyway. My daughters aren't here, I said, but my voice sounded weak even to me. Joseph smiled sadly. Aren't they? Lucy stepped out from behind a tree 20 feet to my left. Emma emerged from the shadows to my right, both wearing those old mining clothes, both with coal dust on their pale faces and empty holes where their eyes should be. Daddy, Lucy said, we've been waiting for you to remember. Remember what? Remember us, Emma added. Remember what really happened that day in the mine. The world tilted sideways. I staggered, caught myself against a tree. Because suddenly I could see it, flashes of memory like lightning in my head. Dark tunnels, the sound of pickaxes, a terrible rumbling as the ceiling came down. Lucy and Emma, so much smaller then, reaching for me as the rocks fell. My death certificate was in my own personnel files back at headquarters. James Caldwell, age 11, died in mine collapse, November 15th, 1923. I'd been walking these mountains for 44 years, believing I was alive. The memories hit me like a flood breaking through a dam. I wasn't 34 years old. I was 11, the same age I'd been when the mine collapsed. The ranger uniform, the truck, the radio. All of it was just my mind trying to make sense of decades spent wandering these mountains as something that wasn't quite alive and wasn't quite dead. No, I whispered. But even as I said it, I could feel the truth settling into my bones like winter cold. No, this isn't real. I have a job. I have custody hearings. I have a life. Lucy and Emma walked closer, their small hands reaching out to me. Behind them came the scout boys, but now I could see them for what they really were. Children from the mine collapse, wearing the clothes they'd died in, their faces streaked with coal dust and sorrow. We tried to wake you up so many times, Daddy, Emma said. Her voice was soft and sad. But you kept forgetting. You kept pretending you were still alive. Joseph stepped forward, the tobacco smoke swirling around him like a protective barrier. The mountain holds on to souls sometimes, especially children who died protecting others. They become guardians, keeping families away from dangerous places. I looked at Mark, the scout leader, and saw my own fear reflected in his eyes. But he was different from me. He was real, alive, breathing. What happens to him? I asked, nodding toward Mark. He remembers, Joseph said. He goes home. He keeps his scouts away from places where the earth is wounded, and maybe, if he's wise, he tells others. Mark was backing away from us, terror written across his face. This isn't happening. This can't be happening. Go, I told him. Get back to your truck. Drive away and don't come back. He turned and ran, crashing through the forest like a wounded animal. I hoped he'd make it out. I hoped he'd warn other parents to keep their children away from these mountains. When his footsteps faded, I turned back to my daughters. They looked so small standing there in their mining clothes, so much younger than I remembered them. How long have I been dead? I asked. Time doesn't work the same for us, Lucy said. But the mountain is waking up, Daddy. The white men are digging deeper, cutting more scars in the earth. We need all the guardians we can get. I knelt down in front of them, seeing them clearly for the first time in decades. My little girls, who'd followed me into the mine that day because they were hungry and we needed the money, who'd died trying to shield me from the falling rocks. I remember now, I whispered. I remember trying to cover you when the ceiling came down. Emma nodded. You did your best, Daddy. But we all died anyway. The company sealed us in, Lucy added. Said it would cost too much to dig us out. Our families never even got to bury us proper. Joseph began to sing, low and mournful, a song in Cherokee that seemed to make the very air shimmer. The earth remembers its children, he said, and the children remember their fathers. I felt something changing inside me. The false memories of ranger training, of divorce proceedings, of a life I'd never actually lived, all of it was falling away like old paint peeling off a wall. Underneath was the truth. A scared 11-year-old boy who'd spent 44 years trying to be the father his daughters needed. What do you need me to do? I asked. Lucy and Emma smiled, and for just a moment their empty eye sockets filled with warm light. Help us guard the mountain, Daddy. Help us keep other children safe. I reached out and took their small, cold hands in mine. As soon as we touched, I felt the truth of what we were settle over me like a familiar coat. Not alive, not dead, but something in between. Guardians. Protectors. I looked down at my hands and watched coal dust pour from my fingernails. My ranger uniform faded away, replaced by the canvas pants and rough shirt I'd been wearing the day I died. When I caught my reflection in a patch of ice, I saw my real face, 11 years old, with coal dust on my cheeks and eyes that held 44 years of accumulated sorrow. We won't let it happen again, I promised them. We won't let any more children die for money. All around us, the other mine children began to appear. Dozens of them, all holding the hands of their fathers, men who'd died trying to protect them, men who'd chosen to become guardians rather than rest in peace. Joseph finished his song and nodded with approval. The mountain accepts you, he said. The children can rest a little easier now. But as he turned to leave, he looked back with worried eyes. This isn't the only place that's waking up. My friends in Carolina, in Kentucky, in Pennsylvania, they all report similar spirits stirring. Something big is coming, Ranger. Something that's going to need all the guardians the earth can find. Mark Peterson made it back to his truck and drove straight to the ranger station without stopping. He told them about equipment failures, about getting lost in a sudden fog, about his boys suffering from hypothermia and confusion. He never mentioned the hollow children, or the mine, or the man who claimed to be a ranger but cast no shadow on the ground. The official report listed it as a case of group exposure to cold weather causing mild hallucinations. The scout troop recovered fully after a night in the hospital, though several boys kept drawing pictures of mining tunnels in their art therapy sessions. Mark resigned from his scout leader position within a month. He moved his family to Florida and never went camping again. As for me, I settled into my new role as guardian of the Dolly Sods Plateau. During the day, I appeared to hikers and campers as a helpful ranger, guiding them away from dangerous areas and making sure families stayed together. But at night, when the moon was dark and the mountains were quiet, I walked with my daughters and the other mine children, checking the old wounds in the earth and making sure they stayed sealed. Joseph Crowfeather visited sometimes, bringing tobacco and sage, performing the proper ceremonies for the dead. He taught me about the network of guardian spirits that stretched across the Appalachian chain, children and parents who'd died in mining accidents, in factory fires, in all the places where human greed had put profit before people. The Cherokee always knew, he told me one cold November night as we stood beside the bog. The earth has a long memory, and when you wound it deep enough, it fights back. The radio in my old patrol truck still worked sometimes, crackling with voices from ranger stations across West Virginia, Pennsylvania, Kentucky, and North Carolina. Always the same reports: equipment failures, impossible sightings, children's laughter coming from empty forests. The network was growing. Lucy and Emma didn't age, of course, neither did I, but we learned things. We learned to sense when mining companies were scouting for new locations. We learned to appear in dreams to warn families away from dangerous camping spots. We learned to speak through radios and cell phones when we needed to guide lost hikers to safety. And on quiet nights, when the November wind sang through the bare trees, we sang the old work songs. Not because we had to, but because we remembered. We remembered the fathers who'd tried to protect us, the mothers who'd sent us to work because they had no choice, the children who'd died in darkness far from home. The mountain holds on to souls sometimes, the ones who died protecting others, the ones who loved too much to rest in peace. We're still here, walking the ridges and valleys, checking the old wounds and guarding against new ones. If you ever find yourself camping in the Appalachian Mountains and your radio starts picking up children's laughter, don't be afraid. We're not here to hurt anyone. We're here to keep other families from ending up like us. But if you see a little girl in mining clothes standing at the edge of your campsite, if she asks you why her daddy didn't save her from the dark, maybe it's time to pack up and find somewhere else to sleep. Some places in these mountains are meant to be left alone. The children remember. My name is Daniel Crestwood, but everyone calls me Dan. I've been a park ranger in the Great Smoky Mountains for 19 years now. I thought I knew every sound these mountains could make. The way wind howls through the gaps, how bears grunt when they're mad, even the way rocks tumble down the hillsides after a storm. I was wrong. It was September 13th, 1985, and I was drinking my morning coffee when the radio crackled to life. Dan, we got a problem. It was Sarah from headquarters. Her voice sounded tight, worried. Family of 4 didn't check in last night. They were camping in Screaming Hollow. I set my cup down hard. Screaming Hollow was the worst place to go missing. Most folks don't even know it exists. It's 12 miles from the nearest road, hidden way back in the mountains. The Cherokee used to hunt there, but they had stories about that place. Bad stories. How long they been out there? I asked. 3 days. The Walshes. Mom, Dad, 2 kids, 8 and 6 years old. My stomach dropped. Kids that young wouldn't last long if something had gone wrong. I grabbed my gear, shotgun, first aid kit, radio, everything I might need. My partner, Jennifer Morrison, was waiting by the truck. She was young, maybe 28, and still new to the mountains. Used to be a cop down in Nashville before she came looking for peace and quiet up here. You ever been to Screaming Hollow? I asked as we drove the rough dirt road as far as it would take us. No. Why is it called that anyway? I didn't answer right away. How do you explain something that sounds crazy? Just be ready for anything, okay? The hike took us 4 hours. The trail wasn't marked. Couldn't be. Or every fool with a backpack would try to find it. As we got closer, I noticed things. Little things that made my skin crawl. No birds singing, no squirrels chattering. Even the bugs had gone quiet. It's too cute. Wet, Jennifer whispered. She was right. After 19 years in these woods, I knew what normal sounded like. This wasn't it. We found their campsite around noon, 3 tents set up in a nice clearing by Bloodroot Creek. But something was very wrong. The tents were shredded, not from the outside like a bear would do, from the inside like something had clawed its way out. Jesus, Jennifer breathed. What could do this? I knelt down by the biggest tent. The sleeping bags were torn apart, stuffing scattered everywhere, but no blood, no bodies, just gone. Mr. Walsh? Mrs. Walsh? I called out. My voice echoed off the hollow walls, but nothing answered back. Tommy? Sarah? Jennifer was checking the other tents. Dan, come look at this. She was standing by a tree about 20 feet from camp. There were claw marks gouged deep into the bark, but they were too high up, at least 12 feet off the ground. No bears that tall, I said. Maybe they climbed up there. I shook my head. The marks were too deep, too clean, like someone had taken knives and just raked them down the tree. But the spacing was all wrong, too wide for human hands. We spent the rest of the day searching, found more strange things, footprints that started and stopped with no explanation. Broken branches scattered in perfect circles, and the cold spots, places where the temperature would drop 20 degrees for no reason. As the sun started setting, we made camp about half a mile from where the Walshes had been. Jennifer was quiet, jumpy. Every little sound made her grab for her flashlight. "Dan," she said around the small fire we'd built, "my compass keeps spinning, and the radio's picking up weird stuff." I'd noticed it too. Static that almost sounded like voices. Whispers in a language I didn't recognize, though something about it seemed familiar. Something my Cherokee grandmother might have known. "We'll find them tomorrow," I told her. But I was starting to think we wouldn't. Not alive, anyway. That's when we heard it for the first time. A sound that made my blood freeze in my veins. It started low, like wind through a cave. Then it got higher, louder. It sounded like screaming, but not human. Not animal either. Something in between. Something hungry. Jennifer grabbed my arm so hard it hurt. What the hell was that? I listened as the sound faded away into the darkness. In 19 years, I'd never heard anything like it. But somehow, deep in my bones, I knew we were being watched. "I don't know," I lied. Because the truth was, I was starting to remember the old stories. The ones my grandmother told me about things that lived in the deep places of the mountains. Things that were never supposed to wake up. But something had woken up in Screaming Hollow, and it was hungry. The next morning, we found the children's clothes. Jennifer saw them first, hanging from a tree branch about 15 feet up. Little Tommy Walsh's Spider-Man shirt and his sister Sarah's pink jacket. They were torn to pieces, like something with very sharp claws had shredded them. "How did they get up there?" Jennifer asked. Her voice was shaking. I didn't answer because I didn't know. The bark on the tree was smooth, no way to climb it. And there were dark stains on the clothes that looked like blood. Rex, our bloodhound, was going crazy. He kept sniffing around the tree, then backing away with his tail between his legs. That dog had tracked lost hikers through 20-mile searches, but now he was scared, really scared. "Easy, boy," I said, but my own hands were shaking as I patted his head. We followed Rex deeper into the hollow. The air felt heavy, thick, like before a bad storm, but there wasn't a cloud in the sky. My radio kept making weird noises, static that sounded like voices calling for help. But when I tried to respond, nothing. "Dan," Jennifer grabbed my shoulder. "Look." She was pointing at the ground. There were drag marks in the dirt, like someone had pulled heavy objects toward the cliff, face up ahead. But the marks were strange. They went in a straight line to the rocks, then just stopped. "Where did they go?" Jennifer whispered. That's when Rex started howling. Not barking, howling like his heart was breaking. He was staring at the cliff, his whole body shaking. Then he turned and ran back the way we came, yelping. "Something's wrong with this place," Jennifer said. She was right. Everything felt wrong. Too quiet, too cold. And there was a smell in the air like old stones and something rotten. We searched all day, finding more weird things. Symbols carved into tree bark that looked old, older than anything should be out here. Cold spots where your breath came out in puffs, even though it was warm everywhere else. And twice, I swear I heard voices calling our names from the wrong direction. As evening came, we made camp again. Jennifer barely ate anything. She kept looking over her shoulder, jumping at every little sound. "I want to call for backup," she said. "Radio's not working right. Storm coming in tomorrow anyway." I looked at the sky. Dark clouds were building over the mountains. "We'll search the cave system tomorrow, then head out." Jennifer nodded, but I could tell she didn't want to stay another night. Truth was, neither did I. But those kids were out there somewhere. Maybe hurt, maybe scared. I couldn't leave without trying everything. Around midnight, I woke up to Jennifer shaking me. Dan, wake up!" I grabbed my shotgun and sat up fast. "What is it?" "Listen." I listened. At first, just normal night sounds, wind in the trees, creek water running over rocks. Then I heard it. Voices. Faint, but clear enough to make out words. Help us. Please, help us. It was a woman's voice, then a man, then kids. A little boy crying, a little girl calling for her mommy. That's them, Jennifer whispered. That's the Walsh family. The voices were coming from deeper in the hollow, near the cliff face. I grabbed my flashlight and started walking toward the sound. Jennifer followed, her own light, shaking in her hand. Mr. Walsh, I called out. Can you hear me? Help! Us! The voice was closer now. Definitely a woman. So, cold. We walked faster. The voices kept calling, always just ahead of us. But something felt wrong. The voices didn't echo right, and they all sounded exactly the same, like someone playing the same recording over and over. Then Jennifer stopped dead. Dan. What? We've been walking for 10 minutes, but look. She shined her light back the way we came. Our campfire was still visible. We hadn't moved at all. That's impossible, I thought. But when I looked around, she was right. We were standing in the exact same spot where we'd started. The voices were still calling, but now they sounded different. Hungry. And they weren't human voices anymore. We need to go back, Jennifer said. Right now. But as we turned around, something moved in the darkness ahead of us. Something big. I caught just a glimpse in my flashlight beam. Tall, maybe 10 feet, with long arms that hung down to the ground. When it turned to look at us, its eyes glowed red like coals in a fire. I fired my shotgun without thinking. The sound echoed off the cliff walls like thunder. But when I looked again, nothing was there. Just darkness. Jennifer was breathing hard, almost hyperventilating. What was that thing? I didn't answer. I couldn't. Because I was starting to remember my grandmother's stories about the Keklakudla, the stone giant. The thing that ate people in the deep places of the mountains. The thing that was supposed to be just a story. By morning, Jennifer was acting strange. She wouldn't eat breakfast and kept staring at the cliff face like she was listening to something I couldn't hear. You okay? I asked. It talked to me, she whispered. In my head, all night long. I felt cold all over. What did it say? That we've seen too much. That we can't leave. I wanted to tell her she was imagining things, but I'd heard the voices too, and I'd seen those glowing eyes watching us from the darkness. We packed up fast and headed for the cave system near the cliff. If the Walsh family was anywhere, it would be there. But as we got closer, the air got colder, and Jennifer got worse. I can't do this, she said, stopping about 50 feet from the cave entrance. I can't go in there. Those kids need our help. They're dead, Dan. Her voice was flat, empty. They've been dead for days. It's just using their voices to call us. Maybe she was right, but I had to know for sure. I couldn't leave those children, even if... Stay here, I told her. Keep watch. The cave entrance was hidden behind a waterfall. I'd never seen it before, though I'd been in this hollow dozens of times. Inside it was dark and cold. My flashlight beam showed rock walls covered with old drawings, Cherokee pictographs warning people to stay away. I should have listened. The cave went deeper than it should have, twisting down into the mountain, and there were things on the walls, fresh things, blood, pieces of cloth, and scratch marks like something with very long claws had been scraping at the stone. Then I found the first body. Robert Walsh was wedged into a crack in the cave wall about 30 feet down. His body was twisted wrong, like something had grabbed him and squeezed until his bones broke. But his eyes were still open, staring at me with a look of pure terror. I threw up. Couldn't help it. Then I forced myself to keep looking. Found his wife Linda deeper in the cave. She'd scratched words into the rock wall before she died. Stone giant real, warn others. The kids were in the deepest part of the cave. Tommy and Sarah Walsh, huddled together like they'd tried to hide from something. They looked so small, so scared. I knelt down and sobbed. I'd a prayer for them. my grandmother's Cherokee prayer for the dead. That's when I heard Jennifer scream. I ran back through the cave as fast as I could, stumbling in the darkness. Outside, Jennifer was gone, just her flashlight on the ground, still shining, and fresh drag marks leading back into the cave system, but not the way I'd come out. "Jennifer," I called. "Jennifer!" From somewhere deep in the mountain I heard her voice. "Dan, help me! It's got me!" Then screaming. Horrible screaming that went on until it just stopped. I was alone now. No partner, no way to call for help. And something in these caves that had killed 5 people and wasn't done yet. The smart thing would have been to run, get out of the hollow, call for backup, let someone else deal with this nightmare. But I'm a ranger. It's my job to protect people, even if those people are already dead. And I had a feeling that if I let this thing live, more families would disappear. More kids would end up crushed and broken in dark caves. I reloaded my shotgun and went back into the caves. This time, I wasn't looking for survivors. I was hunting. The passages twisted and turned like a maze. Some led nowhere. Others opened into big chambers filled with bones. Old bones. From people who'd been missing for years. Maybe decades. All arranged in careful piles, like someone had been collecting them. In the biggest chamber, I found Jennifer. She was still alive, but barely. Crushed against the wall by something so strong it had cracked the stone around her body. "Dan," she whispered when she saw me. Blood was coming out of her mouth. "Don't let it escape." Then her eyes went empty, and she was gone. I heard movement behind me. Slow, heavy footsteps on stone. When I turned around, I saw it clearly for the first time. It was 12 feet tall, made of what looked like gray stone, but moved like living muscle. Its arms hung down to its knees, ending in hands with fingers like knives. But the worst part was its face. It looked almost human, but wrong, ancient and hungry and completely without mercy. When it spoke, the words formed inside my head without sound. "Cherokee blood," it said. "You know the old stories. You know what I am." I raised my shotgun. "Yeah, you're the Kekla, the stone giant my grandmother warned me about." It smiled with too many teeth. "Your grandmother was wise, but not wise enough to keep you away. Those people didn't deserve to die. They trespassed in my hollow. They brought their children into my domain. They fed me well. I fired both barrels right at its chest. The bullets hit like I was shooting at a mountain. Sparks and rock chips, but no real damage. The thing didn't even step back. "Now you will feed me too," it said, and started walking toward me with those terrible, patient footsteps. I ran. The cave system was bigger than I'd thought. Way bigger. Passages led off in every direction, some going up, some going down into the heart of the mountain. And behind me, I could hear that thing following. Not hurrying. It knew these caves better than I did. It knew I couldn't escape. My flashlight was getting dim. I had maybe an hour of battery left, and then I'd be stumbling around in the dark with a monster hunting me. I tried to think like a ranger. What did I know about this thing? It was strong, bulletproof, could move through solid rock somehow, but it had stayed in this hollow for maybe hundreds of years. That meant it was trapped here, or at least it couldn't leave easily. And my grandmother's tobacco had hurt it. I remembered now. Cherokee tobacco was sacred, used in protection rituals. I had some in my emergency kit, just a small pouch I carried for traditional reasons. The passage I was following opened up into another chamber. This one was huge, with walls that disappeared into darkness above my head. And in the center, like some kind of throne, was a massive stone figure. It looked like the thing that was hunting me, but bigger, older, covered in Cherokee symbols that seemed to move in my flashlight beam. "The parent," I whispered. This was where it came from, where it rested, between hunts. I heard footsteps echoing from the passage behind me. It was coming. I pulled out my tobacco pouch and scattered some of the sacred leaves around the stone figure. Then I lit a match and set them burning. The smoke that rose up was different somehow, heavier, with a smell that reminded me of my grandmother's house. The footsteps stopped. "What are you doing?" The voice in my head was angry now, maybe scared. "Stop." The smoke was spreading through the chamber, and where it touched the stone figure, I could see cracks appearing. Thin lines of light, like the rock was breaking apart from the inside. "You want to know what I'm doing?" I said out loud. "I'm sending you back where you came from." It appeared at the passage entrance, those red eyes blazing with fury. But when it tried to step into the chamber, the smoke hit it like a wall. It stumbled back, making a sound like rocks grinding together. I had more tobacco, not much, but maybe enough. I started spreading it around the chamber, lighting small fires wherever I could. The smoke got thicker, and the cracks in the stone figure got bigger. "You cannot banish me," it said. "I am eternal. I have fed in these mountains since before your people came." "Yeah? Well, my people learned how to fight things like you." I was down to my last pinch of tobacco. The creature was trying to circle around the smoke, looking for a way in, and my flashlight was getting dimmer. Then I remembered what Jennifer had said. Don't let it escape. I looked up at the chamber ceiling, at the cracks that were already showing in the rock from the sacred smoke. The whole mountain was old, unstable. A few well-placed charges could bring it all down. I had emergency flares in my pack. 6 of them. Not exactly explosives, but they burned hot and bright. If I could position them right, create enough heat and pressure, the creature was getting closer, fighting through the smoke. It was hurt, but not defeated. In a few minutes, the fires would burn out and it would come for me. I started climbing the chamber walls, looking for the right spots. Places where the rock was already cracked, where a little extra pressure might cause a collapse. The flares would buy me maybe 10 minutes of intense heat, enough to weaken the stone. "You will die in here with me," the creature said. It was right at the edge of the smoke now, reaching in with those long arms. "Maybe," I said, placing the last flare. "But you'll be trapped under a few million tons of rock, and that's good enough for me." I lit all 6 flares at once. The chamber exploded with red light, hot as a furnace. The creature screamed. The first real sound I'd heard it make, high and horrible, like metal tearing apart. The stone figure in the center cracked completely in half. Light poured out like liquid fire, and for a second I could see what the creature really was underneath all that stone. Something old and hungry and completely alien to this world. Then the ceiling started coming down. I ran for the passage as chunks of rock fell like rain. Behind me, the creature was caught in the collapse, buried under tons of stone. But I could still hear it screaming, even under all that weight. The passage was collapsing too. I stumbled through the darkness, my flashlight dead now, following the sound of running water. Bloodroot Creek. If I could reach it, follow it out. A chunk of ceiling hit my shoulder, spinning me around. Another caught me in the head. I went down hard, tasting blood, but I could see light ahead. Daylight. I crawled the last 50 feet as the mountain came apart around me, burst out of a crack in the cliff face, just as the whole hollow shook like an earthquake. Trees fell over, rocks bounced down the hillsides, and from somewhere deep, underground, that terrible screaming went on and on. Then silence. I lay there in the dirt, bleeding and broken, until the search and rescue team found me 2 days later. They said I'd been buried in a landslide, that Ranger Morrison had died trying to save the Walsh family from a flash flood. They lied. I know they lied, because that thing is still down there, trapped but not dead. And sometimes, on quiet nights when the wind blows just right through Screaming Hollow, you can still hear it calling, waiting for someone to dig it out. That was 5 years ago. They gave me a medical retirement, full pension, and a nice house in town. Told me I was a hero for trying to save those people. Gave me a medal and everything. But I know the truth. The Walsh family died because something ancient and evil was sleeping in those mountains, and people woke it up. Jennifer died because I led her into that hell. And that thing is still alive down there, getting stronger, waiting for its chance to hunt again. The official reports say it was all natural disasters. Landslides, flash floods, wild animal attacks. They sealed off Screaming Hollow, put up warning signs, and told people it was too dangerous for camping. They were right about that part. I tried to tell them what really happened, wrote report after report about the Cherokee warnings, about the things I saw in those caves. They smiled and nodded and suggested I talk to a counselor about survivor's guilt. But I know other rangers have heard the stories, seen the reports that don't make sense, found evidence that doesn't match the official story. Some of them come to me sometimes late at night, asking questions they can't ask officially. I tell them what I told you, that there are things in these mountains older than human civilization, things that sleep in the deep places until people disturb them, things that see us as food and nothing more. Most don't believe me, but some do, the smart ones, the ones who've heard the old Cherokee stories and paid attention. My son Michael is 17 now, lives with his grandpa. Ensign Gatlinburg, goes to school, plays baseball. Normal kid stuff. He doesn't know about Screaming Hollow, doesn't know what his father really did out there in the mountains. I hope he never has to, because according to the old stories, the Keklikudle feeds every 7 or 8 years, and it's been 5 years since I buried it under all that stone. The Cherokee elders I've talked to say the barriers are weakening. They say it's getting ready to hunt again. Sometimes I drive out to the access road as close as I can get to Screaming Hollow. I sit there listening to the wind, watching the trees, looking for signs that it's trying to dig its way out. Last month, there was a small earthquake centered right under the hollow. Just a little one, 2.3 on the Richter scale. But it was enough to knock some rocks loose from the cliff face where I escaped. And yesterday, a hiker reported hearing screaming sounds coming from the sealed-off area. Park Service says it was just wind through the rock formations. I know better. I'm getting old, 47 now, with a bad limp and nightmares that never go away. When the Keklikudle breaks free, not if when, I might not be strong enough to stop it again. So I'm writing this down. All of it. The real story. Maybe someone else will read it someday. Someone brave enough and smart enough to do what needs to be done. Because that thing killed 5 good people, and it wants to kill more. It's patient, it can wait. But it's also hungry, and hunger always wins in the end. If you ever find yourself hiking in the Great Smoky Mountains, stay away from the restricted areas. Don't follow unmarked trails. And if you hear something screaming in the woods, something that doesn't sound quite animal and doesn't sound quite human, run. And whatever you do, don't look back. Some things in these mountains are better left sleeping.